When Kiran, our driver, drove us out of Bangalore airport in Karnataka, we quickly knew we were back in India as the traffic built up. The horns began to sound. We saw statues of Hindu gods in little villages and cattle in the street. We stopped at a roadside stall. 3 coffees, 2 bags of crisps and a toasted sandwich for just 70 pence. And we could have bought a 30 pence coconut as well. After around 80 miles we reached Srirangapatnam, where we stopped to visit Tipu Sultan's summer palace. Tipu was the ruler of Mysore from 1782 to 1799. These dovecots are near the entrance to the palace grounds. The palace, which is built entirely of teak, is surrounded by a veranda. Some of the walls are covered with beautiful floral motifs and have balconies from where Tipu used to conduct his court. Another wall is covered with paintings of imaginary palaces. The rooms on the ground floor have been converted into a small museum. Inside, the paintings have not been restored. This room contains furniture from Tipu's time. These pictures are of the man himself. The British administration used the palace for its secretariat from Tipu's death in 1799 to 1868. From here we went to Srirangapatnam fort, which is surrounded by double walls. Just inside the Bangalore gate is the Jummah Mosque. After a battle between Tipu Sultan's army and the British, his body was found here. This shot could have been taken at any time in the last 100 years. We then went into Mysore, where we stayed at the Radisson Blue Hotel. Through the lobby there's an outside dining area beside the pool. After a good night's sleep, we set off towards the east through rural areas. These are oil palms, and these men were selling the fruit to make palm oil. Everyone recognises a haystack, but few of us have seen fields of lemongrass. These monkeys were playing at the side of a recently harvested paddy field. Storks, sheep and even cattle glean the dropped rice. We crossed the Cauvery River, the 3rd largest in South India. This is a big sugarcane producing area, and the roads are filled with trucks overloaded with the stuff. We stopped to look at a couple of village temples at the side of the road. Opposite was a small lake, and beyond it another temple on the hill. We arrived at Somnathpura, 24 miles from Mysore, in the late morning. Set in the middle of well-kept grounds is the Cassava Temple, which was consecrated in 1258. It's now in the care of the Archaeological Survey of India, a government agency attached to the Ministry of Culture that's responsible for archaeological research and the conservation and preservation of cultural monuments in the country. We came here 15 years ago and wanted to see this beautiful place again. The ornate temple is a perfect illustration of the architecture of the Hoysala Empire, which existed here between the 10th and 14th centuries. The temple courtyard is surrounded by pillared corridors containing many shrines. The main temple in the centre is on a star-shaped platform. The inner and outer walls, pillars and ceiling of the temple are intricately decorated with Hindu carvings. It's made of soapstone, which is easy to carve when freshly quarried, but then becomes very hard. Inside is a community hall with many pillars, which were turned on elephant-powered lathes. At the back of the temple, a gated shrine contains a statue of Vishnu. Leaving Somnathpura, we returned through farmland. Sugarcane was being loaded onto a truck, and some of the produce was being sold at roadside stalls. Back in Mysore, we drove down the wide boulevard with statues of the Maharaja, then into the city centre on our way to the palace. This is one of the largest palaces in the country and was built between 1897 and 1912. In the grounds is the Mahalakshmi temple. The palace stands in a courtyard surrounded by beautiful gardens in an area known as the Old Fort. The entry fee of 55p includes the interior of the palace, which has several magnificent pillared halls and open courtyards. One of the smaller halls had a silver and a crystal chair and a carved ceiling. The walls of the corridors are covered in frescoes. There's a gold palanquin and a mannequin of the Maharaja who had the palace built. We left the private Durbar Hall at the end of a fantastic day. The following day we headed north out of Mysore. The tractor was carrying sugarcane, and this stall was selling the juice at the side of the road. We crossed the Cauvery River and came to Brindavan Gardens, one of the most beautiful terrace gardens in the world. They're built at the foot of a dam across the Cauvery River. The gardens were created in 1932 and are set on 3 terraces covering an area of 60 acres. The best time to visit the gardens is supposed to be in the evening when the fountains and water features are floodlit, but it can be extremely busy then. Going in the morning meant we had the place almost to ourselves, and it's a better time to see the flowers. These two sisters from Kerala wanted to adopt us as their parents and take us home with them. Everything is spotless, including the gardeners. The gardens are divided by the outlet from the reservoir, but are connected by this bridge. This north garden is much smaller than the one on the south of the river. The dam was built in a historically dry area to provide water for irrigation and power. It's created a lake covering 50 square miles. Driving up the side of the lake, we passed a tiny farming village, where work is still done by hand and with bullock carts. This is a rice growing area, and the harvest had recently been completed. After the harvest, water from the dam is released into each field in turn. Meanwhile, a nursery area of the field is planted with seed. This patch had enough seedlings to plant an acre of paddy, which yields about a ton of rice. After the field has soaked for a few days, everything is ploughed into the mud. Local herons hunt for catfish, which have been swept in with the dam water. After a couple of weeks, the young plants are lifted from the mud of the nursery area. They're just dropped into the water for 24 hours for the soil to wash off. Then the seedlings are pricked out in nice neat rows, and after about 4 months they'll be ready for the next harvest. At the end of the road are Balmuri Falls. The weir stretches 100 yards across the Cauvery River. At weekends it's a very popular place for families to come and play in the water. Of course, modesty means that ladies must be fully dressed. The dress code has no effect on the amount of fun they have. Here we made more friends who wanted to be on video.
I love you so much.
No, not this one. He was more interested in catching flies. Sugarcane was squeezed for the juice at these stalls. We returned to Mysore centre, where Kieran dropped us at the city market. This isn't a rare breed of yellow cow. Its owner has used turmeric to prevent skin disease. This lady is making garlands in the outdoor area. Bananas are really cheap. A dozen of these small ones were just 20 pence, and they were full of flavour. Moving into the market hall, more garlands were being made. They were selling everything banana on this stall, including the leaves, which are often used as plates. This saves washing up as the cows eat them. The quality of fruit and veg in India is second to none. They're very particular about keeping the market clean. This is fresh turmeric. It's going to take him a long time to prepare this display of okra. Coming out of the other end of the market, Kieran picked us up again and we returned to the hotel. We checked out next morning and took the road south. The first thing we saw was a butcher's shop. Not as unhygienic as you might think, since the meat was delivered that morning and will all be sold and cooked before lunch. We continued through little villages and past this sweet potato field. Driving under the banyan tree, we came across a field where they were growing a mixed crop of okra, beans and tomatoes. At the edge of the field were a couple of jackfruit trees, and this is what the fruit looks like. These ladies were winnowing millet at the side of the road, just before we came to Kabini for our safari.